Too low. Okay, that's perfect. Hello, Jackson Knights, and welcome back to the return of Super Kaiju Binge. That's what makes sense. And today I'm bringing back the show with kind of a doozy. Today, me and Ryan from Kaiju Network, make yourself known, boy.
I'm back.
We'll be discussing a highly divisive, slightly infamous movie that is 1962's King Godzilla. And yes, this is the American version. We are discussing once. I had plans to talk about the Japanese cut, but because the goddamn Godzilla Criterion Collection is just way too expensive, I wasn't able to get my hands on that so that I could talk about the Japanese cut. So I'm just going to have to once again stick with the American version. So let's just jump right into our personal histories, because this might be a long episode, just like my original one. Ryan, what is your history with this movie?
This was not the first one that I saw, but my uncle had a VHS of it. That you've probably seen it before. It's like the cover with it has 76 Kong and 85 Godzilla on it.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
He had that, and I saw it, but I never actually. I might have watched it once, and for years and years, he got rid of the VHS, and I couldn't find it until it was about 5 or 6 years ago, when finally, I think it was 6 years ago, I found it on DVD, and it became my favorite instantly. Today, I don't consider it my absolute favorite, but it still kind of I still have a soft spot for it. So. But it was definitely one of the ones that when I was looking for DVDs, it was like the one that I wanted. So.
Well, my personal history is a bit more involved. So I actually knew that this movie was an actual thing pretty early on into my days of really becoming a big Godzilla fan when I started learning how to use the internet. It shocked me to my core that this was an actual thing. I was like, oh my God, in an age where crossovers are such a rare thing. King Kong vs. Godzilla was made decades beforehand. And at that time, I was really an anti-King Kong guy. I really was not a big fan of King Kong. I was just purely Team Godzilla, and I wanted nothing to do with this movie. I just pretended it didn't exist for a long, long, long time. It wasn't until I was about 12 or 13 years old when I was able to buy a whole bunch of Godzilla movies on Amazon for Christmas, because my mom introduced me to the world of Amazon as well and asked me, hey, you want to buy some Godzilla movies on Amazon for Christmas? And of course, I was ecstatic because I was finally having an opportunity to get my hands on some more Godzilla movies. Because at that time, I only had Godzilla vs. Gigan and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 on VHS and 98 as well. But I was finally able to get some actual Godzilla movies on DVD and expand my collection. So I listed off the ones I knew I wanted right off the bat. But then there was a couple oddballs, and King Kong vs. Godzilla was the biggest one. I finally just got curious, and I said, hey, throw in King Kong vs. Godzilla, too. Why not? So this was actually the first of that collection that I bought from Amazon that I watched. I finally got the opportunity to sit down and watch King Kong vs. Godzilla in full. And I liked it. At the time I liked it. I just liked anything that was Godzilla at the time. It didn't, and my opinions on those films have drastically changed since then. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun time, and that's how it kind of stayed for a long, long time. Not a long time, but for a while. I'd rewatch the movie a few times here and there. And it didn't really, my opinion didn't really change. I just thought it was, it's a fun movie. It's nothing special, but I enjoy it. Then it just kind of got away from me for a while. And when I was in high school, when I had a big resurgence and interest in Godzilla, probably due to the release of 2014, that I started rewatching Godzilla movies, and this was one that I hadn't seen in quite a while. So I sat down and I watched King Kong versus Godzilla, and damn, I did not have a fun time. I don't know why, but that time the movie just really, really, really got under my skin and really got on my nerves. And that's how it was for a long time. I stated this in my original review. Every time I would rewatch this movie, it just kept losing value for me over time. Like I liked it less and less and less. And in my original review for last time I did my Godzilla series review, I stated that King Kong vs. Godzilla is my least favorite Showa Godzilla movie. I don't think that's the case anymore. I actually think it's been moved to another big fan favorite Showa Godzilla movie. Not going to say what it is, but it'll be kind of surprising. But something happened. Something happened to me when I finally sat down to rewatch this movie for Super Kaiju Binge. This was one that I was really, really, really dreading. I was like, oh, God, no, I don't want to rewatch King Kong versus Godzilla. Fuck! So I finally just yanked my head out of my ass and I sat down. And yes, I do have the Blu-ray King Kong vs. Godzilla. This movie looks really good on Blu-ray. Sat down and I watched King Kong vs. Godzilla. I watched the whole movie in one sitting. Something happened. I don't know what it was, but somehow I actually enjoyed the movie. Maybe this is just one of those movies where it really depends on your mood. If you're in the mood just for a fun monster movie, just to turn your brain off and enjoy some 60s kaiju action, then you'll probably like this movie. But if you try to take this movie seriously and look at it as a serious monster movie, you will absolutely hate this film. And as I've gotten older, I kind of like to think of myself as the person who likes Godzilla no matter what. Kind of like how I am with Terminator and Tremors. If Godzilla's in it, I'm going to enjoy it on some level. And that's how I finally come to my views with King Kong versus Godzilla. That being said, this movie still has a lot of problems. There are things that I do like about this movie a lot more than I used to, but a lot of the same problems that I had in my original review with Jackie Boy still do stand and stand very strong. And I do see this as one of the most flawed Godzilla movies of the entire franchise. Has an excellent concept, and it has an interesting backstory. It's just not the best execution. So the backstory, of course, being rather simple. Willis O'Brien wanted to make another King Kong movie, and Toho also really wanted to make a King Kong movie because a lot of the original creators of Godzilla, of course, were huge fans of the original King Kong. So Willis O'Brien penned a concept titled King Kong versus Prometheus, aka King Kong versus Frankenstein, which featured a 30-foot tall King Kong going up against a 30-foot tall Frankenstein monster, which pretty much just looked like a hairless King Kong. But Toho then lost the rights to King Kong, so they then decided to make Godzilla versus Frankenstein, which would have featured Godzilla being revived by the JSDF and be considered the lesser of two evils in a battle against a Godzilla-sized Frankenstein monster. Then Toho lost the rights to Frankenstein and regained the rights to King Kong, so they removed all traces of Frankenstein from the script and just replaced him with King Kong, and that's how King Kong versus Godzilla was made. So yeah, there's that. And apparently this movie was hated by Willis O'Brien so much that some people say this is what led to his untimely death in 1962. Christ, Sean, enough with the cake. You're going to end up with diabetes by the time you're 25. Boy. So with all that being said, let's get into the plot of King Kong versus Godzilla. The plot is actually relatively simple and pretty straightforward, so this won't take long. Mr. Taco. Mr. Taco, head of Pacific Pharmaceuticals, reminds me of a job I used to have, is frustrated with the television shows his company is sponsoring and wants something to boost his ratings. When a doctor tells Taco about a giant monster he discovered on the small Faroe Island, Taco believes that it would be a brilliant idea to use the monster to gain publicity. Why? Taco immediately sends two men, Osamu Sakurai and Kinsaburo Furu, who I like to refer to as Japanese Abbott and Costello, to find and bring back the monster. Meanwhile, the American nuclear submarine Seahawk gets caught in an iceberg, and during this, the iceberg collapses and unleashes Godzilla, who in the Japanese cut had been trapped within it since 1955, who then destroys the submarine and a nearby Arctic military base. On Faroe Island, a gigantic octopus crawls ashore and attacks the native village. The mysterious Pharaoh monster, whom is revealed to be King Kong, arrives and defeats the octopus in one of the movie's most iconic scenes. Kong then drinks some red berry juice, an extremely shitty-looking animatronic puppet that immediately puts him to sleep. Sakurai and Furu place Kong on a large raft, which would not even remotely support his weight, and begin to transport him back to Japan. Mr. Taco arrives on the ship transporting Kong, but a JSDF ship stops them and orders them to return Kong to Faroe Island. During this, Godzilla arrives in Japan and begins terrorizing the countryside. Kong wakes up and breaks free from the raft. Reaching the mainland, Kong confronts Godzilla and proceeds to throw giant rocks at Godzilla. However, not fazed by this, Godzilla then uses his atomic heat ray to burn him to a crisp. Kong retreats with his tail between his legs and his head up his ass, after realizing that he is not ready to take on Godzilla and his atomic breath. The JSDF digs a large pit laden with explosives and poison gas and lures Godzilla into it. However, upon detonation, Godzilla crawls out of it unharmed, with the Creature from Black Lagoon music. Because Universal. Then they next string up a barrier of power lines around the city filled with 1 million volts of electricity, 50,000 volts in the original Godzilla, but failed to turn the monster back, which proves effective against Godzilla. Kong then approaches Tokyo and tears through the power lines, feeding off the electricity, which seems to make him stronger, and which is such butt-fuck buffalo bullshit. Kong then enters Tokyo and captures Fumiko, whom is Sakurai's sister. The JSDF launches capsules full of the Faroe Island berry juice in gas form, which puts Kong to sleep, and are able to rescue Fumiko. The JSDF then decides to transport Kong via balloons to Godzilla in hopes that they will kill each other. Excuse me. The next morning, Kong is dropped next to Godzilla at the summit of Mount Fuji, and the two engage in a final battle. Godzilla initially has the advantage due to his atomic heat ray and nearly kills Kong, and after knocking him out with a drop kick and tail blows to Kong's head, Godzilla begins burning the foliage around Kong in an attempt to cremate him. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning from thunderclouds conveniently strike King Kong, reviving him and charging him up. Bullshitly. It's not even a word, but you know what I mean. The monsters resume their fight, making their way towards the coastline and destroying Atami Castle before falling off a cliff together into the Pacific Ocean. After an unseen underwater battle, only Kong resurfaces from the water and swims away like a little pansy before Godzilla can finish him off. There is no sign of Godzilla, but the JSDF speculates that it is possible he survived, thus ending the film. What do you think of this story, boy?
It's pretty simple. I mean, I'll just say it now, I guess. It's basically the most stereotypical Godzilla and King Kong movie in one movie. I mean, really. It's like, obviously, I mean, the human plot stuff is, it's kind of its own thing, but like, Kong comes from his island and he gets taken on a boat, and then Godzilla comes out of the water and, fights the military. It's all just very, like, stereotypical, so, like, it works in that way, so it's not, like, terrible or anything. There are some ridiculous moments, though.
Some?
Yeah.
Some?
Okay, there's a lot, but,
A lot?
Yeah.
Boy. All right, so my thoughts on this story. Yeah, what Ryan says, it pretty much is the most stereotypical Godzilla and Kong story rolled into one. I can actually understand why that is, because it had been a significant amount of time that both monsters had been on screen. More so for Kong, this was Kong's first movie in 29 years, whereas this was Godzilla's first movie in only 7 years, but still it was a good chunk of time that these monsters hadn't been on screen. So I kind of feel like the filmmakers had no choice but to just kind of softly rehash the most basic elements of both of these monsters' origin stories and then try to shoehorn that into a crossover event for these movies. No, Mr. Taco is not my favorite fucking character at all. The only way that he would make my favorite character is if he was played by Ken Jeong, because then I could see him yell at King Kong, "You wanna butt fuck me?" So then Ken Jeong could get Kong's dong in his butt.
Oh my god.
But the story isn't bad per se. There's just a few elements of it that make it really stick out like a sore thumb, and that makes it very obvious that this was not supposed to be the original movie that the producers wanted to make, and then they just had to shoehorn in other elements at the very last minute to make the movie what it is. But as it currently stands, it's not bad. Yes, it is pretty much a supercut of both monsters' original tales, rehashed in color several years later, and then crowbarred into being a crossover film. But in its current state, it's not bad, and it's not the train wreck that I initially made it out to be. No, that's not what I think about. I just think about funny shit to say on my show. No, I don't ship Ken Jeong and King Kong. What the fuck? Don't be one of those Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy whiny shippers, Shawnee boy there. Please don't. So, what are your pros and cons for King Kong versus Godzilla, boy?
Okay. So I have 5 pros and I have 3 cons. However, I wouldn't focus on the number because just the severity of the cons is pretty bad. But my first pro is that this is my favorite Godzilla design ever.
The King Goji suit.
Yes. It is my favorite design. I like that it has. It's if I can remember, maybe except for 2000, it's the only one that has a green tint to it, and I kind of like that color. And I mean,
Kind of
it's
a greenish blue.
I think, yeah, it's like, yeah, but I kind of think that's why there's like a misconception that Godzilla's green, but still.
Well, it doesn't help on the cover of this Blu-ray here that Godzilla clearly is green. And on the back of this DVD too, you can see in the screen caps that Godzilla is clearly green. I don't know why American distributors insisted on coloring Godzilla green. He's not the Hulk.
Yeah, my Godzilla vs. Gigan VHS is the same.
Yep, that too. It's even worse there.
I don't know if there's anything else I want to say about the design. I just kind of like how very dinosaur-y his face looks.
Mm-hmm.
There are some angles that look a bit dopey, but in general, I like it. I said I think the sets look very good. I think Skull Island's set looks good. At least, like the miniatures and everything, I think that they look good. The city sets look great. So that's a pro for me. So I put special effects. Now there's one specific special effect that I've left for a con, but for the most part,
I imagine what it is.
Movie, they look fine. The suit stuff looks fine. There's a couple weird animatronic moments, as you said, that just kind of look off. But in general, I think the effects are fine. The monster action is a lot of fun. Whether it's Kong's weird battle with the friggin' squid thing, or just their fight in the city, or when Kong comes to the city, I meant to say, or when they fight in like the field or wherever they fight, all of it's good. It's all entertaining. The final battle, it's interesting to see how they fight, because the way that they fight is very strange. Like a lot of weird wrestling moves and shit. And I know the history behind that, but it's interesting at least. And my last pro is, even though they did rework the score for the American version, I still like the score. They kept the theme, which is one of my favorite themes. So
Sleeping Devil, I think it's called.
Yeah, I think that's all my pros. But yeah, so there you go.
Well, let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6 pros. So here we go. Pro number 1 is that I also do like the music score for this film. It's not new music. It's just different music. Because this movie was released by Universal in 1963, Universal decided that they didn't want to really make any new music for this film. They just wanted to rehash old classic Universal monster movie music for this film. So they removed 95% of Akira Ifukube's music. Really, they kept only a few tracks here and there, and they kept the Sleeping Devil theme. But for the most part, they just reused old Wolfman music and Creature from the Black Lagoon music. Now, at first, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's a little distracting and jarring. But I actually find myself quickly getting over it and just thinking, okay, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. Mostly, I just like the use of the Creature from the Black Lagoon music because, A, I like that movie way more than the Wolfman, and I think that movie's music is way better than the Wolfman. There's 2 moments in this movie where the Creature from the Black Lagoon music is freaking epic. One is when the raft explodes and Kong seemingly vanishes, but then you hear him roar and erupt from the ocean. You just hear the Creature from the Black Lagoon theme just blaring and through the speakers, and I think it's pretty epic. And then the next moment is when Godzilla surprisingly crawls out of the pit, and then you hear the Creature from Black Lagoon music play, and it's freaking awesome. And the characters are completely shocked to see that Godzilla survived this explosion. So the music's strange and it's kind of jarring, especially if you're a big Universal monster movie fan. But if you can get past that, I think the music works pretty well. Pro number 2 is the special effects in this movie, I think, are 90% of the time actually pretty good. The miniature sets are well made. Like Tokyo looks great. The Japanese countryside looks really good. All the sets used for Mount Fuji and Akami Castle look really good. Faroe Island looks pretty decent. Overall, the production design and all the sets for the cities and landscapes look really, really, really well detailed. The monster costumes look really good. Godzilla's costume looks really good. Almost caught something there. I like the King Goji design too. I like that it looks very. Godzilla looks very bulky and he looks really strong. And he looks very much like a giant mutated T-Rex. Like, I do agree. King Goji's suit looks very dinosaurian. I like that Godzilla has a very wide jaw. So that's another element that I kind of think makes it look a little bit like the 2000 design. The color is fine. The spines look really good. They're really large and they're really distinct. My only issue with the King Goji design is I don't like Godzilla's hands. They just look really gnarled and warped, and they just look really awkward. And also, I don't like that Godzilla does this stupid clapping thing throughout the entire film. It just looks ridiculous. But I like the King Goji design.
Yeah.
It looks pretty good. Not my favorite Godzilla design, but it's a good Godzilla design. The atomic ray effects look fine, except they're still using like a puppet with just spraying out some water from the mouth from the first two Godzilla movies, but they don't use that nearly as much. They then now just use like animated laser effects for Godzilla's atomic breath. Sometimes it looks really good, and other times it's really, really pale and faint, and you can barely see it on screen. The explosions look great. The fire effects are really good. The two biggest flaws with the special effects, aside from the obvious one, we'll talk about that later. The animatronic puppets look really mostly it's for Kong. I think there's one there. No, there is one for Godzilla, but they don't use that one very much. They only use it for a few shots here and there. But the one that they use for Kong looks so terrible. They use it quite a lot too. Oh my god, it just looks terrible. Kong has these really big, wide, dopey looking eyes. He has a misaligned jaw, and whenever he opens his mouth, his tongue just kind of flaps all over the place. It almost looks like a sock puppet. The animatronic for Kong's head just looks awful. And also the other aspect is the blue screen effects in this movie are pretty fucking bad. They're almost as bad as they were in the Mysterians. There's a few blue screen shots that look okay, like barely passable, but there's a lot of other ones, like mostly the ones that take place at night. They just look so terrible. The blue just bleeds through everybody and makes them look like animated cartoon segments in the film. All the blue screen work in this movie just looks absolutely atrocious. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. And I'd actually say that is the worst aspect of the special effects. Aside from one thing, which we'll talk about later. Con number 2 is that this movie does have some pretty... can I say con? Sorry. Pro number 3 is this movie does have some pretty entertaining monster action. Minus the fight. We'll talk about that in a minute. The monster action in this movie is pretty entertaining. All of Godzilla's rampages are fun to watch. Even though Godzilla doesn't have a whole lot to do aside from just stumble around and destroy shit and roar, it's still fun to watch. And it's nice to see Godzilla back on screen after 7 years. Kong's rampages and his fight scenes are entertaining as well. It's interesting to see a giant gorilla running around a city and destroying it. Because you got to think this is the first time that this was ever done with this large of a Kong or just any kind of giant ape running around destroying a city. Because this was done a couple times in the original Ultra Q show. This predated that by 2 years. So it's fun to watch. And pro number 4 is the final monster fight is really, really entertaining. Godzilla and Kong's first encounter isn't all that special. It kind of reminds me of Gamera and Barrigan's first encounter in Gamera versus Barrigan. It's very experimental. It's really slow and not a whole lot happens. It just pretty much is a demonstration of Godzilla's superiority over Kong. But at least in that favor, it works for me. But the final monster fight between King Kong and Godzilla is very, very entertaining. I noticed on this most recent viewing is that it actually is much more in Godzilla's favor because Godzilla just keeps knocking Kong on his ass, but no matter how many times he does that, Kong just keeps getting back up and running back for more. Only when Kong is bullshit supercharged by the convenient electrical storm does it tip a bit more into Kong's favor. But even after that, I would say that the fight is pretty evenly matched. And I don't declare, like myself, I don't declare a winner for this fight. I firmly believe that the two just fell into the ocean and Kong just decided to give up and swim away. That's my take on the fight. Gonna get this out of the way real quick. For years, we all know this, but I'm just gonna say it. There was a rumor circulating for years that this movie had a double ending. That in the Japanese version, Godzilla wins. And in the American version, Kong wins the fight. This is not true. Nobody wins. Because as I see it, they both fall into the ocean. Kong swims away, but Godzilla lives in the sea. So why would that automatically ensure a defeat for Godzilla?
They both roar at the end of the Japanese version, where in the American version only Kong roars.
There's that too. That's the only ending, or that's the only difference between the endings of the two cuts. Other than that, they both fall into the ocean and only Kong swims away. I think that may have just been started due to international favoritism, which very well could be the case. Now, at one point, Toho did officially declare Kong as the victor. However, not long before Tomoyuki Tanaka died, he did publish a book. I think it's called The Official Toho Monsters Compendium, where he himself declared the fight as a tie. So I would, like, if I was to get past my own personal views on the fight, I would definitely go by that as saying, yeah, it's a tie. The guy who initially created Godzilla is the one to firmly cement the fate of the fight. So as far as I'm concerned, through that, yes, it's a tie. But truly, as far as I'm concerned, nobody really won. Kong swam off before the fight could be completed. But that being said, the final monster fight is very entertaining. It's a lot of fun. It's very dynamic. It's very well edited, which surprised me on this most recent viewing. There's a lot of quick cuts, but it doesn't seem choppy or rushed. It's just really quick cuts, and it's well edited, and it's just very entertaining. It's very dynamic. It goes through multiple phases. At first, there's the testing of the waters. Then there's the more knockdown, drag-out portion. Then there's the almost defeat, and then there's the resurgence, and then there's the ending. It's a very entertaining and well-paced fight. I wouldn't put it on one of my favorite Godzilla fights or even monster fights in general, but it is very entertaining and it is very well done. Pro number 5 is Kong himself. Not talking about the suit, but just Kong himself in this movie. He's badass. I would say this is honestly one of my favorite versions of Kong. There's nothing really all that special about him. He just is a giant gorilla running around, but he still is a badass giant gorilla. His first reaction when he sees the giant octopus is to tear down the wall and just fight it. His first reaction to Godzilla is to try to assert his dominance and try to fight him. And then finally, in his final fight, he tries to be the smart one. Similar to back when I reviewed Freddy versus Jason, I feel like that's how they should do a King Kong versus Godzilla fight, with Freddy standing in as King Kong. They kind of do that here. Godzilla is the giant walking indestructible tank, where Kong is the bit more intelligent, smaller, more agile speedster. And that's exactly what they do with Kong here. Because, technically, yes, Kong is a bit smaller. He's 5 meters shorter than Godzilla in this movie. They do showcase that Kong is a bit smarter than Godzilla, and he's a bit more of someone who thinks on his feet. He's either throwing rocks or grabbing Godzilla by his tail or taking a tree and making Godzilla eat his vegetables, which is kind of funny. He tries to hide from Godzilla. He tries to use ambush tactics. He's really the smart fighter of the two. Godzilla is just the unstoppable brute force slugfest. But yeah, I like Kong in this movie. They execute his character pretty well. And this leads me to pro number 6, and that is Godzilla himself. Not really much to say. And once again, Godzilla doesn't have that much of a personality in this movie. He really just is the indestructible force of nature that is unstoppable and unkillable and indestructible. But he's a total badass. And he's got some intelligence to him, too. But it's more just like animal cunning. When he realizes that he has a trump card against Kong, he's just like spam until the fight is over. He spams his tail, he spams his endurance, and he spams his atomic breath. But those work in his favor, and that's what makes the fight a bit more into his corner, which I do like. But we're not quite developing Godzilla's character just yet. That'll happen a little bit in the next movie, but especially in the movie after that. But still, Godzilla is the unstoppable badass, and it's great to see Godzilla after 7 years. And they definitely brought him back full force, which is great. So what are your cons, boy?
All right. My first one is Kong's design. Holy shit, is this a bad suit?
All right, yeah, we may as well get into it. That's one of my cons with this movie, too. Let's see, hang on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 cons with this movie. We may as well talk about the Kong suit together, because that's one of mine as well. Yeah, the Kong design in this movie is really, really, really bad. I don't know what the fuck Tsuburaya was thinking with this King Kong design, but holy shit, does this look terrible. Kong doesn't look like a gorilla. He really does not. He looks like a giant hybrid ape design thing. He looks like he kind of has the body a bit of a gorilla, but he has the fur of a chimpanzee, the arms of a gibbon, the feet of just a monkey, and he has the face of a goddamn orangutan / baboon. Kong doesn't look like a gorilla. He just looks like a menagerie hybrid of different ape designs, and it just, God, it's terrible, huh?
When he gets wet in the ocean scene, it looks even worse.
Oh yeah, it looks even worse. Like the fur is completely matted to the skin, and it just looks awful. Takes away all of it. It makes Kong almost look like the goddamn Michelin Man.
Oh my god, he looks like a zombie Kong.
Little bit, yeah. And actually, Zombie Kong became a thing in Godzilla Battle Royale fan film. But yeah, this movie's Kong design is just terrible. I like this iteration of Kong, but his design is just terrible. We already talked about the animatronic puppet design too, which looks completely different from the suit, and it looks terrible too. Also, talk about the suit again. One thing that absolutely drives me nuts is that Kong's mouth doesn't move when he roars. He just walks around, kind of smiling like this, with just waving his arms around, and you hear and you hear Kong's roars and growls, but he doesn't even move his mouth, and his mouth isn't even hanging open. It just kind of looks like he has this big shit-eating grin on his face the entire time. One positive too that I will say about this version of Kong, I love Kong's roar that they use for this movie. They reuse it quite a lot in future Godzilla monsters, and especially in Ultraman Kaiju, but I love Kong's roar for this film. But yeah, the Kong design is just awful, and it's unfortunate that Tsuburaya never really perfected executing mammals for monsters in his movies. The closest that he did come to were the Gargantuas and War of the Gargantuas. But still, for such a big fan of King Kong, it's just a shame that design-wise, Tsuburaya never really nailed how to execute King Kong.
True.
Continue.
Yeah, so I do want to bring this up now because this is interesting. This is actually not a con if I was reviewing the Japanese version, but it is here, and I'm saying the human cast, the dubbing for this, and I know you don't want me to compare it in this video, but I have to bring it up because it's so ridiculous. Like, if you see the Japanese version, they change the characters so much in the American version. They add jokes that aren't supposed to be there. The voices sound fucking goofy as shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's ridiculous. So I think, like, I can't stand the guys who go to the island. They're all weird. They all say really cringy things. They kind of just kill me. Mr. Taco, he's funny because he's just so outrageous and awful. He's just like, it's just like so much of the human stuff in this movie. I just laugh at, like, I'm making fun of it because I'm like, this is so bad. Like, why did they decide to do this? And the next one I have is the blue screen effects. Fucking awful. They are so bad. Especially when Kong falls in Tokyo, when they run over and attach the balloons to him. You can see, like, the soldiers standing in the foreground, and some of them are almost transparent. Like, it's some of the worst effects I've ever fucking seen. So I had those for my cons. I can't really think of anything else, but at the same time, those are all kind of big. Because, we're staring at Kong's design the whole movie. The human cast is kind of annoying. So those are my three big problems with it.
Well, as I said, I have 8 cons. Talked about one, the Kong design, so that one's right out of the way. Let's get to the next big problem, is the human cast. Okay, now I did ask Ryan, because he managed to see the Japanese cut. I have never seen the Japanese cut. I don't trust torrents, so don't even go there. I do really want to get the Godzilla Criterion Collection because I would like to see the Japanese version. From what I've heard, I do get the sense that I will probably like the Japanese cut more than the American version. But I asked Ryan to not make any comparisons because I just haven't seen it, so I wouldn't really know what he's talking about. So, at least in the American version, the human cast is just terrible. They go way too over the top with the comedy aspect. Now, from what I've heard, there was a lot of satirical humor in the Japanese cut, but it wasn't this blatant and over the top. That's my main issue with the humor in this movie. It's just way too over the top and ridiculous. All of the jokes are just so forced and corny. All the acting is extremely exaggerated and just way too slapsticky and goofy to be taken seriously. Mr. Taco, the actor, is just really, really hamming it the fuck up, and it's super distracting, and it's also incredibly obnoxious, like the infamous "No more! I'm sick of Godzilla."
Yep.
Hate it. Also, then I just want to say that once again we have a King Kong movie where they're using blackface on Asians to make them look more islandish. Yo, these are like some of the blackest Japanese people I have ever fucking seen. Like, yo, this is fucking ridiculous. Also, another character in this.
I don't know why. I don't know why they would be black though, because isn't it still in the Pacific in this movie?
I don't know. It's not quite as bad as what the hell is the name of that movie? Gap of the Triphibian Monster, where they literally took Asians and they painted them like dark chocolate brown, and it just here it just looks like they all have an extremely dark tan, but it's still obvious that they're just painted black, and it just looks ridiculous. But one character I also hate in this movie, I can't remember his name, but it's like the guide that Abbott and Costello bring with them, who raises his arms up in the air and he makes a monkey face and walks towards the natives. I hate this character. God. I fucking loathe this character. He's so obnoxious and over the top ridiculous that this movie really comes off as being incredibly cartoonish. I can't believe that Ishiro Honda directed this movie. Like, what the fuck was he smoking?
I will say though that I'm sick of Godzilla line. That scene is not even in the Japanese cut. They don't even have that scene.
Yeah, this just really makes me think I probably would like the Japanese cut a lot more than the American version. So I really need to get my hands on the Criterion Godzilla set. So, yeah, the characters all suck. There's nobody that you can root for in terms of the human cast because they're all so obnoxious and ridiculous and over the top that it's just impossible to take them seriously and root for them as protagonists. Con number 3 is the allegory / satire that is absolutely forced and shoved down your throat. Not quite in Godzilla vs. Hedorah levels of shoving down your throat and shoving it in your face, but the allegory and satire in this movie is really, really, really prominent. A lot of people say that a lot of it was cut out of the American cut. I don't really know because I still really see it. I still see all of the commercialism and capitalism themes that Ishiro Honda has in this movie, because literally what the fuck is Mr. Tako trying to do? He's trying to exploit Kong for money. That's capitalizing on Kong. Yeah, the allegory and satire is just really, really forced and shoved down your throat and shoved in your face. Like, this is not subtle Ishiro Honda. Ishiro Honda knows how to be subtle. So I don't know what the fuck he was on with this movie. Like, did he really have a hate boner against capitalism and commercialism? It's done way better in the next Godzilla movie, so maybe this is just like an experiment piece for him. But, geez, dude. Tone it down. Con number 4 is that this movie's paced kind of bad. It's not as bad as I made it out to be in my previous review, but this movie's not paced well. All of the stuff that's going on with the monsters, it flip-flops from each scene. Like with both monsters, there's some scenes that fly by like crazy, and there's some scenes that drag like a continental drift. It's really frustrating and it's kind of jarring, and you just kind of feel like you're being tugged around on a leash when it transitions from slow to quick, slow to quick, slow, then quick, and then slow, and then quick at the end of the movie. It just makes it's really frustrating. The pacing in this movie is really annoying, in my opinion. Con number 5. This is a new con that I have over my original review. All of the American scenes. All of the American scenes in this movie, it's not like the original Godzilla King of the Monsters where the American scenes did actually feel like they were a part of the story. They just feel they feel like commercials, adding more into the commercialism theme of this movie. They feel like commercial breaks. Every single American scene, and why I say it feels like a commercial break, it brings the pace to a screeching halt. And they also feel like massive stroke sessions for the producers of the American cut, really trying to shell this movie out to King Kong and make it more of a King Kong film, despite the fact that at the end of the movie, when the actual fight between King Kong versus Godzilla happens, it's mostly in Godzilla's favor. So they bring the pace to a screeching halt. They're very dull and bland. Like, none of the actors really feel like they're having fun. They just feel like they're giving performances just for a paycheck. And they bring the pace to a screeching halt, and they really feel like the producers were just trying so hard to just beef up Kong in the American public's eye and just make it more in his favor. This is jarring for me because I still am more of a Godzilla fan than I am a Kong fan. So seeing that in a movie that has Godzilla in it being made more into a King Kong film, it's kind of frustrating. Con number 6 is that there's not enough monster battles. There's only one at the very end, and then there's that little scuffle between the two, like a little more than halfway through the film. Could have used at least one more monster fight. Like, it could have been a bit of a shorter one to like Kong gets a little bit braver against going up against Godzilla, so they slug it out for a few minutes, but then Godzilla blasts Kong a few more times and he just runs off. Could he use at least one more fight between the two? But as it currently stands, it's not bad, but I still could have felt like it could have used more. Next, con number 7 is the stupid lightning electrical plot point. Why? I know why. Because that's a leftover element from the Godzilla versus Frankenstein script. Because presumably, because Frankenstein was brought to life by lightning, makes sense that he would draw strength from electricity. That works for Frankenstein, but that doesn't work for Kong. That just kind of feels like the makers of the movie were just trying to give Kong some kind of trump card against Godzilla. No, that's not what you do. Because Kong is an ape, you should have just played up more on him being more intelligent and being more of a thinker than Godzilla. And he like outsmarts Godzilla, and the fight is more tipped in his favor because he starts thinking, not pulling a bullshit, completely unrealistic, yes, I know, for a giant 45-meter gorilla ability to have, being able to absorb and get stronger from electricity. The fuck? If this was Frankenstein, I wouldn't bitch. I'd actually say it's pretty clever. But for Kong, it just doesn't work. And the last one that I have here is the humor. Kind of already talked about this, but it's way too over the top. It's way too over the top. It's way too obnoxious. It's way too overly comedic. It just feels forced and shoved down your throat. None of the jokes are funny. It just feels so slapsticky and ridiculous. You just look at it and you're just like, what the fuck am I watching?
Oh, my corns hurt.
Oh, yeah. The corns. It's like,
another
I don't want to hear about your corns.
The dub.
Yeah, the dub in this movie is not very good. Ugh. Ooh, that Kong. He's chicken. Yeah, the humor just sticks out like a sore thumb. This is not subtle humor. The next Godzilla movie would have much more subtle humor, and it's all the better for it. But here, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. Hang on one second. Keep talking, Ryan.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, even compared to Mothra versus Godzilla, they definitely have a way better human element in this movie. Maybe that was just a learning curve for them, but I don't know. Like the human stuff in Raids Again wasn't bad, so I don't know. Maybe you can blame that on the American studios that dubbed the movies, but a lot of those lines, a lot of those silly jokes were made up for the English dub. Whereas, and I get that example that when he jokes about his corns hurting, that's not even in the original. In that scene, they're actually genuinely scared that Kong's woken up and that they should get out. So a lot of the humor's added there that's kind of annoying. Even with Mr. Taco, there's a lot of scenes that...
Oh my god, he's the worst character in this movie. He's so obnoxious.
Yeah.
He's over the top obnoxious to the point where it's just annoying.
Oh, I like Fumiko because she's pretty attractive, but...
Oh yeah, the female characters, I totally forgot about them. That's because they have fuck all to do. The only reason that Sakurai's sister is in this movie is so that King Kong can have a chick in his hand.
Don't they both basically just like worry about their husbands or whatever the whole time?
Yeah, they do. And it doesn't help that they both look very similar. Like, what the fuck?
Racist? Yeah, they do.
The female characters in this movie are totally useless and completely forgettable. Like, the fuck.
Yeah, and not to mention that the one character that his magic string is only in the movie so that they can do that one scene where they hold Kong.
Oh yeah, and they're constantly tripping over shit in this movie too, which gets really annoying as well. Yeah, it's like what Sean says. They're made to be incredibly pathetic characters. Any final thoughts?
I mean, it's got its problems, but I don't really know if I would do too much differently if I was in the position that they're in. I'm just interested to see how they do the remake or the redo of this next year, hopefully.
Godzilla better win.
I don't know. Like, is there even a way to do it without it being cheesy? I don't know. I just have a lot of fun with this movie. And probably my most watched, if I'm going to be honest, out of all of them. So, I like this movie a lot.
My final thoughts on King Kong vs. Godzilla. I'm not going to do like a new, this is how I would do it. The only thing that I would do, I just would have gone either with the King Kong versus Frankenstein idea or the Godzilla versus Frankenstein idea. I think those would have been much better movies. But that did lead to Frankenstein versus Baragon, so there is that. But other than that, King Kong versus Godzilla is no longer one of my least favorite Godzilla movies. I enjoy the movie a lot more than I used to, and I don't think it's as bad as I initially thought it was. But that being said, this still does have a lot of problems. Excuse me. There's just some creative choices here that just don't make sense in context with these monsters. Excuse me. And again, I probably would like the Japanese cut of this movie a lot more, but until I get my hands on the Godzilla Criterion Collection, this is all that I have. So I will be giving this movie a 6.5 out of 10. It's not bad, but it's not great either. It's got a lot of problems. But if you just want to sit back and watch a 60s monster movie and turn your brain off and just enjoy it, you'll get your kick with this movie. Just don't take it seriously and don't think about it too much. What's your final rating?
I used to give this a perfect 10 out of 10, but I'll give it a 9 out of 10. It's still a lot of fun, but there are some things that kind of bug me now about it. But I still really love it.
Well, fair enough. So that'll about do it for this review of King Kong vs. Godzilla. Thank you very much, Ryan from Kaiju Network, for joining. This was actually a lot of fun, and I actually am glad that my opinion on this movie has changed. As I get older, like I said at the beginning of this review, if Godzilla is in it, then I'll enjoy it on some level. I'm not just gonna overly hate it and over the top hate it. I love Godzilla and I love Godzilla movies and love it so much that I managed to turn a 2.5 rated movie into a 6.5. So that's cool. So Ryan, you got anything to plug?
I'm just continuing my Kong review series right now. I have a video coming up soon where I basically talk about how I would fix Godzilla King of the Monsters. So that'll be a fun video.
Pass.
You'll see.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Alrighty, tune in next time on Super Kaiju Binge where I don't know, I might skip Matango because that's not really a monster movie. Well, tune into more episodes of Super Kaiju Binge. This series has officially restarted, and we're going to be back on track with monster movies for a little while. And post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, if you see two giant monsters fighting in Mount Fuji, don't fly over them with a helicopter. That's a terrible idea. And I will see you guys in the next video.